The second climatic event that we focused on that you saw a little bit earlier in our matrix was sea level rise. With sea level rise, we really focused again on crop damage, diet, waterborne and vector-borne infections, as well as unpredictable tides. Crop damage is really becoming a problem because there is an increased incidence of flooding as the sea level rises, and this is affecting, again, a lot of their crops. Taro being the one that's most affected, and this is a staple food in Palau and also in their diet. Tapioca and sugarcane are also being affected by the increased incidences of flooding and saltwater intrusion that's happening because of the rise in sea level. Medicinal plants are also being affected in crops, and this doesn't have anything to do with their diet necessarily, but it is very important to Palauans because for them, these medicinal plants serve as their way of healing. They view traditional healing as what works for them, and they actually view Western medicine as the alternative, so loss of this is extremely harmful to them. With the crop damage comes a shift in diet, and this shift goes towards more processed and less healthy foods. There's also been an increase in non-communicable diseases because of this shift in diet, and this has seen a rise in diabetes and obesity. About 40% of the 9.7 million people that are in the South Pacific region have actually been diagnosed with diabetes, and that number is extremely high compared with the 13% of the United States population that's been diagnosed. And to combat this, the Ministry of Health is working alongside the Ministry of Education to implement a lot of school programs to work with children to teach them proper nutrition and a healthy lifestyle, and also focus more on eating locally grown foods instead of imported processed goods. Waterborne and vector-borne infections are also increasing because of the rise in sea level. Flooding is bringing about standing water where a lot of mosquitoes can breed, and they breed a lot around low-lying homes, and these homes are extremely susceptible to things like dengue fever and malaria. About 31 cases of dengue fever were confirmed in Palau in 2008. The number has remained relatively stable over the past couple of years, but there was an outbreak notice issued back in June of this year to the entire South Pacific Island region, letting them know that this still, while it's been stable, is still out there and they are still susceptible. Also with sea level rise, unpredictable tides are becoming a problem. Again, this idea of flooding is a great issue, and as it becomes more frequent as the sea level rises, a lot of coastal land is permanently lost. On some of the coastal land in Palau, there are a lot of burial grounds that are very traditional to them, and these are becoming washed away. Also with unpredictable tides, access to healthcare is becoming a big problem. So when we refer to health access, what we are talking about is individuals' ability to get to a hospital or get to a dispensary on the island, and also the ability of medical services to reach them. This top photo up here is actually of the Palau National Hospital, and as you can see, it's extremely close to the ocean. Our photographers were on a roof of another building trying to get this shot to show how vulnerable the hospital is to these unpredictable tides and the rise in sea level. Isolated populations are also at risk to health access and unpredictable tides. This bottom photo is of a Palau emergency evacuation boat. Palau is a state of Palau, however, it's a separate island and it's about an hour boat ride away. On Palau, they do have a dispensary and a clinic where people can access healthcare, but in the event of a serious emergency where they require additional healthcare that could be provided by a hospital, this is what they would have to take. So again, access to healthcare is becoming limited by this rise in sea level.
Hi, my name is Lauren, and I'm going to be talking about El Nino, which is the third climatic event that was mentioned on our matrix. El Nino is a weather event that begins in the South Pacific Islands when trade winds are weakened. In a strong El Nino, ocean temperatures can rise as much as 2 degrees above normal, which can lead to extreme weather events and coral damage. Palau has the most diverse coral fauna in Micronesia and highest density of tropical marine habitats. Unfortunately, coral bleaching is damaging this diversity. Coral bleaching outbreaks in Palau are considered to be one of the greatest threats to Palau's coral reef ecosystems. Palau's reef ecosystems were significantly harmed in the 1997-1998 occurrence of El Nino, and as you can see on the screen, this is a healthy picture of coral reefs, and this is them when they were bleached. Coral reefs are useful to people and their environment in numerous ways. They protect the shores, supply food and medicine. They are economically beneficial, and their beauty attracts thousands of tourists each year. Increasingly, frequent El Nino occurrences have led to more cases of coral bleaching, which leads to a decrease in tourism. Tourists who are uneducated about the reefs can damage the coral significantly. Now I'm going to discuss fishing in Palau as well as the fish distribution. Fishing is just as relevant to Palau's culture as it is to their diet. El Nino events can vastly affect the fishing in Palau as well as the distribution. Changes in the distribution directly affect those who depend on fish as a primary source of income and a primary source of food. Now I'm going to discuss the weekend trade winds. Trade winds were originally seen as a tool for commerce. However, this vital cycle is being damaged by El Nino and it threatens to change the marine ecosystems in the South Pacific Islands. Now I'm going to discuss the extreme weather events. The extreme weather events can cause a multitude of natural disasters. It can cause a loss of clean water, shelter, personal and household goods. It can damage the healthcare system and it increases the number of floods, droughts, and wildfires.
Hello, I'm Andrea and I'm going to be talking to you about the target audience. This clip that you're about to see is an interview that our primary research team did with Dr. Corte, the Minister of Health.
To me, the greatest vulnerability in Palau is actually not children, not women, and not the elderly. That is not the greatest vulnerability. It's actually those people who are well, or so-called non-vulnerable population. To me, that is the biggest vulnerability. Because unless we adopt a health model so that we protect the healthy ones, then the vulnerable will also suffer. Now, the reason I say it's not the children, it's not the women, and it's not the elderly, is because the biggest vulnerable population is the mentality of the healthy ones. They ought to own these people. If they could just turn that and own, then that would solve a lot of issues.
Dr. Corte stresses that the most vulnerable population is the healthy Palauan citizens. Based on his ideas, we have chosen 2 target audiences for our campaign. Our primary target audience is the healthy citizens of Palau, both male and female, ages 16 to 65 years old. 68% of this audience reside in Koror. The average household member number is 4, and their average income is $11,117. Farming is the major contributor to food for this primary audience, but many still continue to shop at local grocery stores. WCTC Shopping Center and Serangles, both located on Koror, are where this audience shops. Our primary audience utilizes television, newspaper, and radio to obtain information. Although the radio stations are few in Palau, this audience listens to 89.5 FM through Diaz Broadcasting. The 3 newspapers that they receive information from are the Island Times, Palau Horizon, and Tia Palau. 5,000 out of 11,000 televisions subscribe to the digital cable network. Their favorite channels are Channel 23 with Oceana Broadcasting, or Oceana Television Network, and Channel 26 through Diaz Broadcasting. Our secondary target audience is children and adolescents ages 8 to 15 years old. We chose this audience because we recognize them to be the future of Palau. This audience uses traditional media, but they are becoming more avid users of social media sites such as Facebook. Their favorite radio channel is 88.9 KRFM, and their favorite television station is Oceana Television Network.
In addition to the evidence that Dr. Corte provided for our target audience, we also developed our key idea from this interview. In the clip that you were about to see, he has an analogy at the end that we use to really develop our key idea from.
And I know that the debate is always that the women and the children and the elderly are vulnerable. There's no argument about that. But they only become vulnerable when the healthy ones are not looking after them. So the biggest vulnerable population is, in my mind, is the healthy ones, almost like the airplane. Put on your mask first, and then help the next one. Because if you don't, all of you are gonna die.
It is from from this airplane analogy that we developed our campaign theme of protect, provide, unite. And through this analogy, we understand that each word serves a separate purpose, but they must all exist together to really make sense. The first word of protect really came from our primary and secondary research. We learned that individuals really need to protect themselves from certain health aspects that are related to climate change. Our advertisements will demonstrate this and also educate the audience on protective measures that they need to take. And protect is really important in our key idea because we're teaching them that protecting their own health is an investment into the well-being of all Palauan citizens. The next word of provide is important because after individuals have protected themselves, they can then provide assistance to others. This assistance aids in lowering individuals' susceptibility to these health risks that are associated with climate change. And provide is also important because, again, we're providing this education that protects the future generations of Palau. We're also bringing our primary and secondary audience together, and this leads to the final part of our key idea, which is unite. Palau already has a very strong sense of community that exists, but this idea of uniting them should raise awareness and increase their knowledge of the health risks that are associated with climate change, and it should increase this among all of our audiences.
So you've heard our primary research, our target audience, and our key idea. And now I'm going to tell you about our communication objectives, and this is what our plan is going to accomplish. Our first communication objective is to increase awareness levels to 75% among the primary target audience that there is a need to protect themselves against the health risks associated with climate change. This will be accomplished within the first half of the 6-month campaign. Our second communication objective is to increase awareness levels to 80% among the secondary audience that there is a need for them to be the future healthy generation of Palau. By increasing awareness with the secondary audience, it will allow them to register that there is a need to protect themselves, their family, friends, and community against the health risks associated with climate change.
I will now tell you our 3 advertising objectives that we plan to use throughout our campaign. First, we want to establish in the minds of 75% of the 2 target audiences that protecting their own health in order to provide education and assistance to others is an investment into the health and well-being of all Palauan citizens. This will be accomplished during the first half of our 6-month campaign. Second, we want to establish top-of-mind awareness in 80% of the 2 target audiences that there are increased levels of health risks that are associated with certain aspects of climate change. This will also be established during the first half of our 6-month campaign. And lastly, we want to reinforce in the minds of 75% of the 2 target audiences that climate change is related to certain health issues in Palau, and this will be accomplished during the second half of our 6-month campaign.
My name is Jeff Chandler, and I'll be introducing our media objectives. In our first media objective, we plan to reach 75% of our primary target audience 5 times per month throughout our 6-month campaign. And our second media objective, we plan to reach 85% of our secondary audience 3 times per month throughout our entire campaign.
This is our logo that we will be using throughout our campaign. It features the Palauans' traditional flag colors, blue and yellow, and also shows our 3 words, protect, provide, and unite. We will be using the circular arrow to unify our key idea and represent the Palauan circular way of thinking. We plan to use this logo in all of our print and television advertisements, and in radio we will be reciting the words protect, provide, and unite, since the logo will not be able to be visually seen.